Hey everyone, it's me Tim from FTA Adventures, and today we're going to talk about this little guy again. This is the DJI Mavic Air. I did a full review on this recently, but today we're going to talk specifically about the active track feature when riding a motorcycle. I've been getting a lot of practice with it lately, so I have some tips and tricks and some ideas for you guys to try out if you're getting this little guy, or you're trying to get this little guy to follow you while you ride a motorcycle. We're going to jump into all of that right after this. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about the Mavic Air and the active track feature on that. This also works on the Spark and some of the higher up models. It does not work on the Mavic Mini, however. So we're going to talk about some things that you should be looking out for and paying attention to if you're trying to do this, and I'll give you a few tips and tricks on how I've been playing around with this. And at the end, I'm going to show you some footage I got kind of testing this out in the desert the other day. So there is a distinction between active track and follow me. Follow me, I believe, is on the higher up models of the DJI. Active track is following you based on image recognition. Essentially, it just takes a shape and follows that shape across a landscape. However, follow me feature is based on GPS, meaning it's going to follow the remote control, and that's how it's going to know where you are. It is important to note, if you're going to be trying this, you want to be aware of where their sensors are on your drone. So for this one, there's sensors in the front, there are sensors in the back right here, and there's also a couple of sensors on the bottom right here. There are no sensors on the sides. So this can kind of be an issue if you're flying in the trees, especially if you're using certain modes of active track where the drone will be flying sideways. It is susceptible to running into something, a branch or a tree, so definitely something to be aware of. However, if it's flying in front of you and flying backwards, it will stop if it senses something behind it or in front of it. If it gets too low, it will also sense that. So as far as the settings I use, just real quick, this is what works for me. You might want to play around with this. I shoot at 2700 resolution and 60 frames per second in case I want to slow it down a little bit. Without losing that really smooth cinematic look. Now, there are other settings you might want to play around with. I'm not really going to get into that because it's kind of personal preference, but if you're using something like this, an ND filter for your drone, then you can play around with some more advanced settings and things like that. Like I said, I'm not going to get too much into that today. So there are three different options when you're using active track. You have profile, trace, and spotlight. Profile is when you kind of set it off to the side, kind of at an angle, and it will basically maintain that angle and follow your profile if you're moving sideways. This works really well if you're out in an open area because the drone will most likely be flying sideways, and like I said, it's not going to stop if there's something in front of it. So you kind of need to pay attention to that. It's better to do this in an open area so you're not distracted from riding the motorcycle, and you can just kind of trust it, like, okay, I've looked and there's nothing for it to hit for this distance. Trace, on the other hand, is essentially if you wanted the drone to follow from behind you or in front of you. It works better from behind you. It gets a little wonky if you have the drone in front of you using trace mode. A lot of times it'll kind of start going off to the side and doing kind of unpredictable things. From behind, however, it just kind of locks onto you and it just follows behind you in this really cool kind of third-person view. And there's also spotlight, which I really don't use very much, but this essentially keeps you in frame but doesn't really follow you. This might work well if you're taking a sweeping turn around a canyon or something and you want to get just going by. It'll stay on you and it'll watch you, but it's not, if you start going away from it, it's not going to follow you. This could also be cool if you want to catch yourself driving off into the sunset. So basically you're going to go into quick fly features, go into active track, decide which one of the features you want to use, and then you can either tap the little green dot on yourself if it recognizes you. If it doesn't, you just kind of draw a little box around yourself and then hit go. And that's kind of it. I mean, it just does the rest of it for you. You do need to kind of pay attention, but that's all that you really need to know how to do. If you are doing this without the remote control, there is a max flight distance of 100 meters. There's no way you can change that without the remote control. What that means is when you take off, the drone is only going to fly 100 meters in any direction before it stops. Even if your phone is right there, 30 feet away, it's only going to fly 100 meters from that point where you took off from. This is kind of a problem because that goes pretty quick on a motorcycle. So I do recommend that if you're going to do this, you use a remote control where you wouldn't have a max flight distance. There's no limitation on that unless you set it that way. Another thing too is that tight turns, they get a little tricky, and the drone can kind of tend to lose you if you like do a U-turn and turn around and go the other way. There's a good chance it's not going to catch you doing that. Sometimes it'll surprise you though, and it does work. And the other thing too is that if you ride in front of an obstacle, say a tree or something is covering your path, the drone's going to just lose you. And even if you pull out on the other side of that bush or tree or whatever, it doesn't always catch you and keep following you. Sometimes it just like stops there and says, I don't know where you went. So that's kind of something to be aware of. Now, hypothetically, this will follow you at 34 miles per hour in active track. That is best case scenario. I haven't really gone that fast. I usually keep it around 15, 20 miles an hour, which is super slow. And this really works much better if you're not on the pavement, if you're not on a paved road and you're off out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, even if you are on a paved road, you want to make sure there's no other traffic around. That, riding a motorcycle should be the main priority. If the drone crashes, it crashes. That's better than you crashing because of doing this. 15, 20 miles per hour off-road, you're able to get some really cool shots with that, and you don't lose the drone so easily. It does help if you start off pretty slow on the bike and give the drone a chance to kind of adjust itself to like what's going on here. This works a lot better if you're walking or riding a bicycle. When you get on a motorcycle, it's easy to kind of just get on and take off, and the next thing you know, you're going 25 miles an hour and the drone's like, where'd you go? So starting off a little slower definitely helps. Another thing too is if your screen locks, if the screen goes black, it will stop following you. So you want to make sure that you turn that setting off in your phone, or just make sure that you don't accidentally hit the lock screen button. And the final thing is to make sure you're being aware of your surroundings, keeping an eye out for power lines that might be over you, that are in the drone's path, trees and things like that. Just try to be aware of it. And what I like to do is I only do this for just short spurts of the drone following me. I don't just send it up and let it follow me for 20 minutes while I go exploring. I'll kind of set up a shot and say, okay, this is pretty cool, this little like canyon where I'm on the edge of a drop off, and there's nothing over this way, so I can just have the drone over there following me. I know there's nothing for like 200 feet, 300 feet, so I'm just gonna get on the bike and just know that like this is a good shot. I'll have it follow me. I'll pay attention to riding. I know that no matter what happens, even if it loses me, the drone's not gonna be in trouble. I just go and don't pay attention to the drone at all. And then I stop and just make sure like, okay, the drone's still there, it's still following me, maybe I can go a little bit more, and I pre-plan just in short chunks of so I just kind of pre-plan, short chunks of shots that I want to get, rather than just send it up and assume that, it's going to follow me and doing it as I go, because you're trying to operate a motorcycle, especially if you're off-road, or actually even if you're not off-road and you have to deal with, there might be traffic or things in the roadway, pedestrians or whatever. So just taking it in smaller chunks and making sure that you look at your surroundings, know what you need to be aware of, figure out how far you can go safely with the drone following you and not paying attention to it, and then going from there, stopping and readjusting and say, okay, I got this much distance. As far as the motorcycle setup, how I'm operating this from the bike, this was something I was really struggling with trying to figure out, because if I mounted the remote control with my phone in it down on my tank bag, it was too low, so I was constantly having to look down to see where the drone was, and that was really a huge distraction. Until I found out, and this is a pro tip here, this has worked really well for me, is that I can use a USB-C to USB cable and plug into the drone right here, and then plug the other end into my phone, so they don't have to be attached to each other, because the cable that comes with it is very short, and you really can't get very far from that remote control. So with another cable, that's like a normal charging cable, is about 3 feet, you can have this mounted down on your tank bag in front of you, just in case you have to take over and land the drone or something. And then basically just have a cable running to wherever you have your phone mounted, which I have my phone mounted up on the handlebars where I can see it. And this way it's not such a distraction. I can kind of just glance down and look and see real quick, okay, the drone's still following me. Or sometimes I'll pull over, I'll stop, and I'm looking around and I can't see the drone anywhere. I've just completely visually lost it. I can look at the screen real quick on my handlebar and just say, oh, okay, I can see where I am in front of that. Okay, it's right behind me. Another thing that helps with that too is having a darker colored drone. Against a blue sky, the white ones tend to get lost. This color here, I think it's graphite or something. It's a little bit easier to see in front of a blue sky. However, if you get this thing in front of mountains or darker colored rocks or trees, it can blend in a little bit. So I don't know, maybe I need a neon yellow strip on there or something to make sure I can find it a little easier. That's about it for how to do it and my tips on doing it. Safety is your main priority. You want to make sure that operating the motorcycle is your main focus, and just get everything else, kind of set it and forget it, and then just ride your bike a little bit and you'll get some really, really cool shots. I've really had a lot of fun playing around with this. I get such a kick out of this little drone just like following me around. It's really, really neat, and a lot of cool things you can do with it and kind of make your vlogs or your travel videos a lot more dynamic. So I'm going to show you an example of something I did a couple weeks ago when I was out playing around with this on a dirt road. So I hope you guys enjoy this little example of what I was able to do with active track a few weeks ago when I was on a dirt road out in the middle of nowhere with no traffic. There were some power lines that I was kind of keeping track of, but basically there was nothing out there to really get in my way. And I came up with some pretty cool footage, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Anyways, that is it for this video. I hope you guys got something out of it. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff so you don't miss anything whenever I post something new. On this channel, I post a lot of videos to kind of give you the tools and resources to maximize your adventures and the inspiration to get you out there. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.